I'm so excited to see so many people here. We are in a battleground as parents raising children in a world that is much different than just a decade ago. We have the number of students with disabilities in our schools is astronomical. Kids who have some sort of special condition or behavioral challenges. Behavioral challenge is the number one issue that our schools are facing. And a lot of that goes back to what Dr. Barnes was talking about in being able to get your kids prepared to be in that next environment, which for a lot of kids is school. There are certainly more and more and more parents who have chosen to homeschool their children because of the lack of trust, really, that they have on the school systems to raise the children in the way that they believe that their children should be raised. So we have lots of kids. I was listening to actually Colin Powell the other day, who's doing a presentation, something that had been pre-recorded, and he was giving some statistics on that today's minorities, in one more generation, today's minorities will be the next generation's majorities. The disability community is the largest and fastest growing minority in the world. And if we do not prepare our children who have these special needs today, we are not going to be able to depend upon them when we need them to run our world. And we have to be able to prepare them with making good decisions, like Dr. Barnes talked about. And we can't do that if we're not parenting in a way to prepare them and get them ready. So because we have this growing number, and I'll just speak for autism for a minute, just to kind of give you guys a frame of reference. When I have a son who has autism, because most of us, who get into these types of fields do so because we have a child who has a special need or something that's going on with them. It's like soccer moms. Soccer moms get involved in soccer, they got a kid who plays soccer. So we tend to kind of gravitate towards where our kids are going and growing. And when my son was coming out of kindergarten, so he's 24, when he was coming out of kindergarten in Broward County schools, we had about 900, give or take, a little bit, of kids with autism in our schools. Today we have 6,500. That is the exponential rate that particular disability is growing. And I know a lot of people you'll hear on the news, oh no, it's not really growing, we're just getting better at diagnosing. That same year that he came out of kindergarten, there were 10 schools in Broward County schools that had specialized programs for autism. Now there's 61. Those are not children that would have been missed. Those are the kids who have significant issues to where they need a specialized program. So that just lets you know, gives you a little bit of peace on how fast this is all growing and that we have to be proactive. So because we have so many numbers, we need money. Our school system needs money. The state of Florida is the 4th largest economy in the United States, the 17th in the world. But yet we rank 44th in this country as to how much money we spend on public education. And that's not special education, that's education of all of our children in the state of Florida. Things like that need to change. We're not keeping up with what we should be doing. And then of course we have school shootings. And that is something real. And I'm in different schools every day. So from day to day, I never know what school I'm going to be in to help the parent advocate for what their child needs. The amount of fear in the schools is palpable. Every school is concerned about having that next student. Senate Bill 7026 passed in the state of Florida about a year ago. That is the one that if a student is deemed to be a danger to themselves or to others in the school, they initiate what's called a threat assessment team. It is a result of what happened in Parkland. And students who have special needs, especially those with behavioral challenges, are those students that are getting bogged down in that response. The amount of children who have been Baker Acted from our schools, because the school doesn't do the Baker Act. School calls 911 because they think a student is a danger to themselves or to others. And then the police come, and then oftentimes the determination is made to take the student to a facility. where they're Baker acted, which means they're going to be under observation sometimes for a couple days. Sometimes the psychiatrist at the facility will say, this isn't a mental health issue. Your child could be autism, could be other types of disabilities. But our children with disabilities are being very much wrapped up in that, and the Baker Act rates have increased 55% over the last 10 years. The biggest factor that impacts parents of children that have any kind of special need is fear. It can be consuming, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is that. When you have a child who has a disability, sometimes a very significant disability, the fear is so pervasive in wondering, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with my child? How is my child going to be taken care of? What's going to happen when I die? Which is something that weighs on the heart of parents of children with disabilities everywhere across our globe. So we have some good news. So I'm going to read from Philippians 4, 6 through 7. We can get that up there. Philippians 4, 6 through 7, I believe it's in your notes. Be anxious for nothing. It doesn't say sometimes be anxious or be anxious when you really have to be, but be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. Talk to Him. Talk to Him, because the really good part is that the second part of this verse tells us there's actually a promise in it. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, meaning that it is so beyond what we can wrap our brains around, is going to be there for you, and it's going to guard you, and it's going to move you through that moment. And then the second part there, 2 Timothy 1 through 7, for God has not given you a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. When my son was diagnosed, I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. We belonged to a different church at the time, and he would go into the child care, and we went to, there was an adult Sunday school. I would drop the kids off. We didn't know he had a disability. He was so different from his older brother. We couldn't figure out what is happening here. And we would drop him off, and there were the two elderly ladies that worked in there, and when we would pick him up after the 45 minutes to an hour, they looked like they had just gone through the ringer. They were like, here, bye, Zach, go. And they just wanted him out of the room. And people would say, there's something up with him. And I would say, yeah, I know. I talked to my pediatrician. I know he's very different than his brother. But, they tell me, give it more time. Give it time. Don't compare him to your brother. Don't think about that. It's going to be fine. He's a boy. Boys talk later. What are you worried about? As we were going through temper tantrums that were tremendous, no verbal communication whatsoever, didn't seem to understand or care about any of us in his world. And he is a child that at 12 months old, he did have a few words. And then he lost one at a time over the next about a year. And by the age of 2, he had no words, and he had totally and fully disconnected from us. But I listened to my pediatrician. He's the physician, and I loved my pediatrician. I thought he was fabulous. And it wasn't until a friend of mine was over for dinner who had been a principal at a school of children who had autism, and she came over and she said, I think something's up with him, because he's looking like some of the kids in my school. And I said, I know, but my pediatrician keeps saying, stop, give it time. And she said, I think you need somebody else to look at him. So I go back to my pediatrician and I tell him, this is what my friend says, she's an educator. And his response was fairly disheartening to me, because he said, educators should stick to education and keep their business out of medicine. And I said, well, I need somebody else's opinion. So he said, all right, and he gave me a referral to a neurologist. It wasn't 5 minutes. That doctor could not wait to get my son out of his office. He was literally tearing the room apart. He was like, get him back in the stroller, get him back in the stroller. And so that was what these ladies were dealing with in the nursery. And so I go into, the next Sunday, we have a diagnosis, we go, we sit, we get him situated, I tell the ladies what's going on, and such a blessing to us because their tune totally changed. From being get your kid out of here, it was like, we're gonna pray for you. We're here for you. And so letting them know that we knew what we were dealing with ended up to be quite the blessing for us and for him. So I go into my group and I'm sitting and I'm hysterical. I'm crying because I haven't yet realized that I have these verses to fall back on. And I'm hysterical, and I don't know what to do. And I was sitting in a women's group, and the one who ran our group has 6 children, every one of them typical, which I never find anymore these days. And she listens, and she lets me cry, and lets me do my thing. And because it was all my words were, my poor baby, what is gonna come of him? What kind of life is he going to have? And she waited a minute and she said, maybe this has nothing to do with him. And this is all about you and what the plan is for you and what you're supposed to do. And so I thought on that, and then I found these, and once I found particularly 2 Timothy, because I was so riddled with fear. It consumed me. I felt like I could not breathe. But then when I realized, okay, this isn't from you, and I got to push through. And that really solidified my relationship with God, knowing that I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to be able to do it. I was incapacitated. So being able to know that, the fear that was inside me that was eating me alive wasn't coming from him. I just want to pray real quick before I move on. Dear God, I pray that you would be with every person in this room today. I pray for your blessings. I pray that you would continue to be able to speak through me as your vessel and bless us all with the wisdom that comes from the experiences that we have in this world. And that people would leave this room today with greater knowledge than they came in. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so then in the beginning, so you guys know you get the diagnosis, or you get, if it's not a diagnosis of something, you have a teacher. You go and you pick your kid up from school, and your teacher's like, oh my, you got to do something. As if we could do something about something that happened at 8:30 that morning. If you have a child in a public school, and we're not going to get into all that today, but you need to know that you have rights. If your child has an IEP, an individualized education plan, you have rights. So if things are not going well at school, they should be. Because parents who have that have an astronomical amount of rights that most parents don't even realize that they have. Parents of children who don't have a diagnosed disability, but yet have some of those behavioral challenges, there also are supports in school. One of the good things about Senate Bill 7026 was that it came with a pocket of money. So kids who have mental health conditions, behavioral challenges that are not associated with a diagnosis of sorts, there are dollars there. Sometimes our systems need a little bit of a push to let them know how to use those dollars, where to use those dollars, but it comes from you guys being able to speak up for them when they're at school. So when you're beginning the journey as far as the diagnosis, if you're in this room and you think your child, because that's how a lot of us start off, you think that your child has something, there's some challenges, you can't put your finger on it, you don't know what's going on, but you feel like there is something, go with your gut. When somebody tells you give it time, don't worry, there is no worse thing that can happen by going to another professional and saying, I think this, but I keep getting this response from my physician or my teacher. Early intervention is amazing. And so for kids that are 2 and 3 years old, that's the time to catch them. That's why, like Dr. Barnes, he didn't start when his kids were teenagers. He started when they were here to be able to grow them up in the way that they should go. I deal with parents all the time who have teenagers with significant behaviors. So much so they lock their doors at night because they're afraid of being hurt by their own child. You do not want to be that parent. And if you wait to deal with the behavior when they're here, I can almost guarantee almost every mom in here, your kids, girl or boy, they're going to be bigger than you, physically. And especially when they're males, if you're built like me and you have a male son who's 18 years old, 250 pounds, you are not going to be able to get him to do what you want at that time. If you wait and giving them what they need when they're younger and making sure that they understand. So in Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you in my righteous right hand. And I can tell you that even when things get really, really bad, I promise, there is somebody else who's going through something even more challenging than you. When my son was diagnosed and went through that with our church, somebody in our group said, we have a prayer group, and you should bring him to the prayer group. Okay, so I go and I bring him in there. He's in a stroller, and the pastor's wife at the time comes over and she says, "What are we praying for?" And I said, "Well, he has autism. I want it to not be there. I don't want him to have autism anymore." And she goes, No. Got to be specific. We're going to be specific. What are we praying for? And I said, "Well, I want him to talk." He can't talk. He can't communicate. Not one word. He couldn't imitate a sound, nothing. And I said it would be really nice if he would be able to engage with us a little bit. Now, I'd like to tell you that, he started talking, and, that was the miracle of the moment. And, God has his own time. There's a time frame, and it always doesn't coincide with what we would want. Like in Jeremiah, where it talks about, I know, the plans that I have for you. And I'm like, I want to know the plan. Tell me the plan. And I had somebody say to me when I said, I want to know the plan. Somebody said, yeah, but if you knew the plan, you'd probably try to find a detour and not have to go through the plan. And that would have been true. I would have tried to figure out how to get past at least those first 10 years. But I will say that my son today is in an art school. He's verbal. He communicates. He graduated from high school on regular standards. Life is hard for him. It is a challenge. But he's an amazing individual. And if he was not in this world, like so many, every one of your kids, if they were not here, the rest of us would not be in the great position that we're going to be in, because we're going to get to know them and love them and benefit by their presence. The best outcome kids are the ones, and it could be a divorced parent, but it's the parents who are working together for their child. I have a kid who just a couple weeks ago, extremely challenging. He has a mental health condition, he has autism, he's got a lot of stuff going on. And the parents are not together. But when they're there at that meeting, they are together. They're there advocating for their son. The school sees them as a force to be reckoned with in making sure that their child gets what they need. So it is certainly best if the family can stay together, but if they can't, that doesn't mean that one of you shows up and the other one does not. So number one, in the principles, you have to know that your child can't help it. So when you're feeling really angry and really frustrated, you have to recognize that your child can fix it. Excessive anxiety gets in the way of making good decisions. How many times do we write, we're mad? And we could be mad at AT&T because our phones went out, our Wi-Fi went out. And we get on the phone and we're screaming, right? We're throwing a fit with the person on the phone. This person doesn't know us from a hole in the wall. They're just some guy answering the phone. And we fall apart. Or teenagers who make really poor decisions. One of the biggest concerns is writing that email because you're mad and then hitting send and not waiting, especially if it's your child's teacher and you're mad and you've had it, and you write that really ugly letter and you send it. You're leaving your kid with this person for 6 hours a day. Think about that. And I'm an advocate, so I'm not telling you to sugarcoat everything and say everything is peachy. I'm not saying that either. You need to advocate for your children, but there are ways of doing that, and there are ways that you don't want to do it. So when you're ready to click send, because your anxiety level is through the roof, breathe. Take a step back. Go cook dinner. Go make lunch. Go hang out with your kids and do a puzzle. Go do something and think. Talk to a friend. Talk to your spouse. But calm down. Because some of the biggest regrets that I ever hear families make are those things that we have done when we're frustrated, we're anxious, because this is our kid. Don't get caught in the comparison trap. Don't compare your kids. Like I said before, no two kids are the same. And unfortunately for us, we have a system that does just that. That's why we have standardized tests. They're comparing your kid to your kid, to your kid, to your kid. A lot of kids with disabilities, I see them all the time. They make jobs making a lot more money than I make. It doesn't mean that they cannot perform, they cannot excel, they cannot have truly successful lives. It's just that oftentimes they do not fit inside that box that society has created for them. So do not get yourself stuck in that box. Do not let a Florida standardized assessment score determine your child's outcome. Number 4, love unconditionally because of who they are and not because of a test score. There's some really good research on mirror neurons and how from infants, we mirror. That's how we learn, right? We watch our parents, we imitate their behaviors. That's how communication begins. We imitate our parents and the sounds that they make. Every child that's born on the face of the planet who does develop the ability to speak, to verbally communicate, does so with the language that their mother or their father, whoever is caring for them, speaks. They don't start speaking a foreign language. They're imitating those who are around them, who are nurturing them. You have to be a mirror. And if you are freaking out every day, and you're falling apart, and you're edgy, and you're rushed, and you're stressed, and you're anxious, and you don't have your act together, whether they have a disability or they don't, we have scientific proof to show that the mirror neurons are going to kick in and they are going to imitate your behavior. Celebrate your child's strengths. Be the cheerleader. And you know what? It doesn't have to be, a trophy sitting on a table that's the 20th space spot. No, it could just be a word, a sound, that they walked in and they said good morning to you. And make sure that you're specific. I love the way that you cleaned off the table and I didn't have to ask. That was awesome. Oh my gosh, that helps me so much. And make a big deal about stuff. One of the things that I think is actually a blessing, you don't really see it when you're a young parent, but you will as you grow older, the small things. The things that your neighbor's gonna go like, so what? You're gonna love. And that's what I think that as parent of a child with a disability, you're going to get to experience, because every step, every good thing, and there will be good things, I promise you. And it's going to be amazing, and it's going to make you laugh, and it's going to make you cry. Be consistent, otherwise you're just confusing. You have to structure things, you have to keep things consistent, you have to be there for them, you have to structure it, you have to give visual supports, and we're going to run out of time. But if you want to talk to me about that, I can kind of give you guys some guidance on how to structure things and make your life in your home and in your school structured, because everybody operates better inside structure. Hairy-carry stuff is confusing to everybody. You can't expect a good outcome then. Get connected. This church has connect groups. There's support groups all over Broward County. There's lots of support in our community. And it's so much better, easier, more fulfilling to do life with other people that are going through the same stuff that you're going through. And it's going to help you recognize that no matter how bad you have it, there's somebody that has it harder. And they've risen above, so you can use them as your example. And a bonus point is to know that God is in control. Sometimes we like that, and sometimes we don't. Because he's going to take you places that you need to go that you don't want to go. You don't want to. I didn't want to have a child who had a significant disability. But almost daily, I will have a client that will say to me, God bless you. Who gets that? Who gets to go through life where your clients are telling you that you are a blessing to them? So even when it's hard, know that he's there, he's in control, and you might not like it in the beginning, but I promise you it's going to be good. Just a couple more things. Journal every day, because you know what? When you have those yucky days, you want to be able to look back and go, oh, okay, so last Tuesday was pretty good. It's going to help you get through those days. And it's going to help you when you have that rough day, that you'll be able to look in there and help yourself figure out, how do I not have that again? And look for your purpose. There was something really good, and I'm going to end with this, is that there was a quote that I have that says, we can be who we are without the good things that we've experienced, but we cannot be who we are without the challenges that drives us to find meaning in our lives. And it's the choice, the ball, if you will, is in your court to decide who you're going to be, how you're going to help your child. And I also want you to know, because I work with a lot of adults who have disabilities, and it doesn't matter what level of disability. I have kids who are on G-tubes, respirators, cannot verbally communicate. One of my dear friends uses an eye gaze system to communicate. It's a computer in front of her, and that's how she communicates. They have such a place in our world to help us recognize the things that we need to do and the blessings that they are to us. That I know it's really hard when your kids are little, and when you get older, you're going to have these epiphanies like I've had. But you're going to find that those humans impact all of us, all of society, and we need all the positive impact in this world that we can get. And when we can spend time with somebody with a significant disability who has been able to overcome their challenges and to be a blessing to others and share their journey, we all benefit by that. And that's how we change and we grow and we turn our society into really what it should be. So thank you all for your presence and participation.
Yes, we're so thankful for you, Stacey.